Hey everyone, this is Nathan with Doctors of Running, and today I'm going to be doing an initial comparison review between two new shoes from ASICS. These shoes are going to be coming out on March 4th, right after the Tokyo Marathon, and they're two shoes that are pretty heavy hitters. They're their top tier racing shoes. It's the new METASPEED Sky and Edge Paris. So if you remember these shoes, the originals came out, and then they came out with the Plus version, which was really just a big upper update for the most part. These are the first time there are some significant changes to these models. There's a lot to talk about between them and between these two shoes, and also the changes from before the previous models to now. And so I'm hopefully going to be able to explain what some of those differences are from a technical design standpoint, but then also talking a little bit about my experience, because personally I did not get along with the original METASPEED Sky. I couldn't get along with it and get a lot of miles in, but in this case, I'm not going to have a problem. So we're going to talk a little bit about why I think that could be. These shoes still come in at the same price point as they did before, at $250, which is very consistent with a lot of the other pricing that you're seeing for racing shoes. I think it's also of note that there's kind of one major study that was done by Dustin Jobert that compared running economy benefit between different super shoes, and the top shoes that had the best performance were the Alpha Fly and the Vaporfly, and these were right there in that kind of top tier of performance. So it's exciting to see a new update and an evolution that could actually potentially improve the performance of the shoe from a running economy and performance standpoint. The reason that I say that you could see some changes for the better is twofold. One is that these have both dropped a lot of weight. So the Edge is 25 grams lighter than its previous version, and the Sky is 22 grams lighter than its previous version. So now the Edge comes in at 185 grams or 6.5 ounces, which makes it even lighter than the Vaporfly in a men's size 9. And then the Sky is coming in at 183 grams or 6.45 ounces. So two extremely light shoes, and you can feel that when you put it on. So the shoes have, one, dropped weight, which decreased weight has the potential to improve running economy. The second change that they've made is to the midsole. So the first two versions, the Edge and Sky and then the Edge and Sky Plus, really we're going through an evolution of the upper. This time we're seeing a movement from Flight Foam Turbo to Flight Foam Turbo Plus. So Turbo Plus is a full PIBA-based midsole that's a new blend and has, we don't get specific details from the companies of like what's the compliance and what's the resilience, but we got to sit down with their team last week to talk about these foam properties and ask them some questions, and they said that there is some data that was showing improved energy return, but they couldn't really give us specifics. It's even in like the tech sheets that they send out, there's improved, energy return and all that, but we don't have the specific numbers. So long story short, they're dropping weight, and it's a new foam compound that's full thickness PIBA based. That's of their own proprietary stuff, and we wanted some more details, but people have to hold things to their chest because that's their proprietary thing. So those are the two major changes that are pushing these shoes towards potentially better performance. The other major change from the previous version to now is seen in the Edge Paris. Before, the Edge was kind of characterized by an 8 millimeter drop compared to the Sky, which was 5 millimeters. Now, both of these shoes have a 5 millimeter drop. So in the Edge, you have 39.5 millimeters in the heel and 34.5 in the forefoot. And then for the Sky, you're having 39 and 34. So pretty much the same, just a half a millimeter more in the Edge compared to the Sky, but they both come in with that 5 millimeter drop. So that's another significant change from the previous versions of the Edge to now. Okay, so let's start talking a little bit about the differences between these two shoes from a design standpoint. So when these shoes first came out, it was all centered around these conversations about stride versus cadence runners. There's a lot to be talked about on that. I think it's more appropriate for our podcast, but ultimately the design is just, there's two different ways that these shoes are designed based on the design of the plate and the shaping of the midsole. So when it comes to the shaping of the midsole, that's where we're going to start. And you're going to see the differences in the amount of flaring in the forefoot. So the shoe with the orange outsole is the Sky, and there is a large flare of the midsole medially or to the inside. You can kind of see how it ridges way up. Whereas in the Edge, you have a much thinner, and you don't have that big bulge coming out from the shoe on the medial side. So that's one part where there's a much wider forefoot in the Sky. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that exists. The second part of shaping that's different is the shape of the rocker. So in the Sky, you have a much flatter shoe on the bottom with a later apex and a rocker in the forefoot. So you have a more aggressive or a higher angled rocker in the forefoot of the Sky. And you have an earlier starting, more gradual rocker in the Edge. And so again, if I hold them up here, you should be able to tell that in the Sky, which is this shoe with the orange outsole, has a sharper angled forefoot rocker than the Edge, which is more gradual and starts a little bit earlier. So the big changes the big differences in the shaping is from that flare in the forefoot, where you have that big flare in the Sky, in the forefoot, and not in the Edge, and then the sharper and later starting forefoot rocker. The other changes in the plate and differences in the plate. In the Sky, the plate is much more flat and it's closer to the foot. Whereas in the Edge, you have a more curved plate. So it starts high and then it's going to dip down into the midsole and have kind of that S-shaped curve. The difference in that is going to be very much in the sensation of the run, but the concept behind it is where the amount of foam is underneath the plate that's going to take the impact and loading. So in theory and in studies, the amount of foam underneath the plate is what's going to give you the best return and benefit. And so there was a study done where they compared plate positions and which one had better running economy. And in general, the closer the plate is to the foot, that increases the amount of compressible foam under the plate. And they found that the closer it was to the foot, the more running economy benefit that the shoe had. Now, that was comparing shoes with the exact same geometries, so it's not directly applicable here, but that's the concept with the Sky in keeping the plate a little bit flatter, because when they talk about the stride versus cadence runners, this would be a shoe that would be for what they call a stride runner, which means it's somebody who is putting more of the loading ultimately through the forefoot of the shoe. So they want to increase the compressible foam and that underneath the plate in the forefoot, because you're going to be spending a little bit more time there because you're having less contacts with the ground. Again, a little bit that doesn't exactly describe what's going on with stride versus cadence runners. In PT research, we talk about it, hip strategies and ankle strategies. But the concept here is you have a plate that's closer to the top of the shoe, and the flaring medially allows for more foam to be underneath that plate. In the Sky, or in the Edge, you have this curved plate, which means that most of the compressible foam underneath the plate is going to be found in the heel. And so they're finding that the people who fell into their category of cadence runners landed a little bit more in the heel and were having more contacts with the ground. And therefore, that they wanted to have a lot of compressible foam, mainly under the heel of the plate, and didn't care as much about the forefoot. All right, you're still with me, everybody? There are some of the major differences in design between the shoes. I think from a personal experience standpoint, I'd mentioned before that I had a lot of issues with the original Sky. Part of that was because when I would run in it, the foam compressed so much in the heel and it didn't compress a lot in the forefoot. And so I felt like I had to climb out because of how I land in my mechanics. I felt like I had to climb out of the Sky, and it was just really problematic for me to get in rhythm. And my calves just took a lot of load. So I would not be able to put a lot of mileage in it because my calves would get super sore and it was not worth it. And it wasn't even comfortable to run in. I have not experienced that at all with this new shoe. I think it could be twofold. One, I think that the new foam compound feels remarkably different. It has a lot more bounce. It just, the whole shoe feels lighter. It feels like there's no wasted design in this thing. It just turns over really, really well. Whereas I really kind of like trampolined into the heel on the original Sky, and the foam just didn't have the life. So I feel like I'm hitting this foam and it's bouncing right back and not just compressing. So I think that's a big part of why I'm having a little bit more success running in the Sky, and I'm going to be able to get a good amount of miles on. I think the second thing that could be contributing to this is the plate design. I don't have the details of the plate design of the Sky, and they could come back and tell me that it is the exact same shaping of the plate. But if they dipped down further into this foam, it's possible that that could have been why I was having a problem getting up onto the toe. So I think that they did a really nice job updating the Sky, partially and mainly because of this new foam compound, where I don't feel like I'm having that sinking problem. That said, I'm having a much better experience so far in what I've done in the Metaspeed Edge Paris. And I think a big part of it is this earlier staged rocker. Though I'm not having that sinking feeling and having to climb out in the Sky, I still feel like I can't get up on the toes very easily, and I have to kind of change my mechanics to get some sort of rhythm with the Sky. Whereas with the Edge, I switched my shoes halfway through one of the runs I did in them, and I put this thing on. I was like, whoa, like this is really rhythmic, and I'm getting into it right away, and I'm really feeling like it's pushing me forward. And that's because with how I'm running, I'm getting onto this rocker right away, and I'm not having to get forward to it and then feel that propulsiveness up. When I really picked up the pace, the Sky felt a little bit smoother for me, but for how I'm experiencing it, slower paces, for me, looking at my half marathon and marathon paces, I really fell into rhythm easily with the Edge and not so much with the Sky. This is consistent for me with other models. So as much as ASICS has done their kind of marketing around this Stride versus Cadence runners, a lot of companies have shoes that have similar differences in design between two different super shoe options. One of those companies is Saucony. So they have the Endorphin Pro. So this is the Endorphin Pro 3. Haven't ran the Endorphin Pro 4 yet. And then this is the Endorphin Elite. So similarly here, for the Endorphin Elite, you have this later, sharper forefoot rocker, whereas in the Pro 3, you have an earlier, more gradual forefoot rocker. And again, for me, I get along much better with the Endorphin Pro 3 than I do with the Endorphin Elite. And it's probably, again, due to where the apex of that rocker is and how my mechanics match with the placement of that. The other company that I brought here as an example that I get along with one and not so much with the other is Hoka. So we have the Rocket X2, which is a later initiated, sharper forefoot rocker here, where it's a little bit flatter until you reach that forefoot rocker. And I have a little bit harder time getting up onto that and getting in rhythm unless I'm running really fast. I don't really enjoy running in this shoe. But then they have this Yellow X1. And this one has a full length rocker that is starting earlier, is a little bit more gradual. And this one, I can just fall into rhythm right away, whether I'm running a little bit easier, like for a warm up, or starting to pick up the pace. So for me, I have found that I can consistently get into rhythm with shoes that have that earlier starting, more gradual rocker that are still stiff and have a really nice resilient foam, but not so much with those later stage starting rockers. So, there's a lot more to be talked about. Our team all has these shoes to test between. We're going to be trying to release our own experiences because we understand that these shoes cost a lot of money. And not everyone has the ability or privilege to just get both and then figure out what feels better for you. So we want to each describe our experiences in them to try and help you figure out which one should I give the shot for. So we're going to have different videos out on this. We're also going to be writing an in-depth review, trying to detail the experience to help you make an informed choice of which direction you'd want to go. So, again, these are two really fun shoes. They're super light. I would put them up against anything. Honestly, when I was running in the Edge for the first time, I raced my most recent half marathoner was a 20K. So my most recent 20K in the Vaporfly. And I just felt like the Edge felt as close to what that felt like as anything. And as of today, with the testing I've done on it, and there's more testing to be done, I would easily pull this shoe out for a race. But we'll see when push comes to shove. I do know that this week I have a 5-mile race, and I'm going to be throwing the edge on for that 5-mile race, even though I'm not going all out on it. It's the one I'm going to lean towards just because of how comfortable and easy it was to get in rhythm. So there's a first initial comparison review between the METASPEED Sky and Edge Paris, and we look forward to testing more and getting more full reviews out on Doctors of Running and on our page here.